Hey everyone, Matthew again, back to this is the second to the last week of this course. And it's about exploring the body's connection in relationship to helping to heal from trauma. There have been a lot of different things we've covered, but today I want to focus in on the importance of receiving. Now, that sounds kind of general and vague, but as I've said in the previous short little episodes or sessions, that I think that one of the main things that one of my true north when I'm trying to help people that are living as trauma survivors is that I want to help them come home, right? And whatever that means, home being this, right? And so like ask yourself, think about the difference between having a house and having a home, right? Something else happens when you have a home, like something else is received and grounded in a home, right? And so part of coming home, I think, is once you've started to develop some mind-body skills and mind-body connection, start to recognize the sensation differences between feeling disconnected and connected, ungrounded and grounded, balanced and off balance. And remember, the whole point of what we've been trying to do these last few weeks is trying to get you to recognize the ways in which your body can actually teach your mind things, especially about certain sensations. Sensations themselves, the word itself, it intrinsically, I think, includes the body. So one of the things, I just want to make another about the sensation of receiving. And I, by the way, like sometimes when I'm asked, like what, as a yoga teacher, I get asked, what's your health tip for the year? Mostly I just say you need to practice receiving, because I think that a whole bunch of things have to be presupposed in order for you to truly receive. One of the distinctions, and I think that keeps that some of us, and by the way, I don't know if you're like me, receiving is really hard. Whether it's a compliment, whatever it is, it's not an easy thing to let in because the mind is not very good at receiving, right? The mind has to be taught by the body. Think about how much you received as a baby when you were forming, and the good and bad things, but like that's the foundation of how we know how to receive. And it gets more and more difficult the more and more you're like receiving a compliment, taking credit for certain things. For most of us is actually really hard. But I want to make a distinction early on here between receiving and taking, right? So, and we all know in our lives, that there are just takers. I kind of hope you're not one, but there are people that just take from the world, right? But taking isn't always bad. Sometimes you just need to take wonderful support from people, right? And sometimes that happens with body work, or you're just there, hopefully you receive it too. But I think one of the things that distinguishes taking from receiving as a mind-body practice is I actually think that receiving takes a little bit of discipline. It actually takes a little bit more. You can just absorb and take and let in, right? But in order for you to receive it and to know what's happening, to be able to appreciate what's happening, it actually takes a little bit more from you than just pure affective receiving, right? It's going to include your mind and your body. So this sensation of receiving is something that I think there are certain core things that also stop us from doing it very well. I think that on some level, receiving on some level takes a little bit of vulnerability, right? That you have to be okay with letting something in, which if you're in a survival tunnel after being a trauma survivor, maybe like taking things in is really scary, right? But again, you get to start basic because input is coming into you all the time, whether it's just through your visual field, whether it's through sound, like all these things. And the great thing about receiving, if you're having trouble doing it, is you get to control when you're alone, let's say, like how loud you have the music. If you decide to just listen and if you decide to dance, if you decide to move with the rhythm or not, if you decide to have congruence with what you're receiving, which would be what dancing would be, right? It's a form of congruence and a form of expression, right? So there's all these different ways that you can actually control receiving as when you start to recognize it as a happening within the mind-body relationship. And I think it's unfortunate how much we have labeled um, vulnerability with inward awareness. Like we go around protecting this level of our mind-body relationship that we think is really fragile. And part of one of the things that I want to like flip that over and say, I think your most resilient, strongest part is what your mind thinks is the most vulnerable, right? And we tend to confuse, I think, the sensation of being open at this less tangible level, open, right, with the sensation of being vulnerable. And that's because we're not practicing how to be open. That there are ways to ground openness. And that's what we've been trying to show over the weeks, that you can be receiving and more open if you do some things to make your mind be more okay with it. It's a certain kind of receiving that the mind's protecting from, right? And especially if you're a trauma survivor, you're trying to, there's certain incursions you don't want to have. But what happens is the mind will always resist. That's part of its job, fortunately, right? Unless it's been practiced a lot of different ways. So the strategies for like being like transforming or changing your language, your internal language between what is it to feel open. So like just sit up straight and tall. Right now, right away, I've already given an instruction that adds structure. Right? I said sit up straight and tall. I didn't say slouch and collapse. Right? Which sometimes is fine when you're super tired to collapse down, but sit up straight and tall starts a different relationship between me and what I'm receiving, right? So start to feel more present. And of course, I just don't want you to like visit parts of your body with your mind. I actually want you to engage. So feel your feet on the floor. And the feeling on your sitting bones. And again, we've been practicing week to week, is like now don't sit up straight on your sitting bones and let it collapse. And notice the feeling of collapsing, right? Now, again, become more alert. Provide some structure. Press down through your inner heel. Hit down with your sitting bones and lift more up through the core of your body, right? And as you're lifting up, drop your shoulder blades down. So there's a level of more, you're filling the vessel. That is a form of receiving. Your structure creates a different sensation. Your discipline, right? And so when you like what we think is rest, which I think is unfortunate, slouch your shoulders again and just let it, this is how we wear our stress, right? We end up and feel the sensations that you feel when your chest is dropped, right? So now try to coordinate pressing down through your inner heels and lifting your chest and feeling your sitting bones. And let a feeling of spaciousness come, not just in your body, but that you have a more alert relationship to the space in the room, right? Now, this is not how you want to try to sleep, right? Sleep would be a beautiful form of taking, right? Right? Like you just to get to shut down and actually have the sleep happen. But what's funny is that people have a hard time falling asleep because they don't receive their bed. They don't take the time to receive before they start taking, right? And so this kind of alertness and call it appreciation, call it whatever you want. Now soften around the temples, the skin on the face, and especially the inside of the mouth and the jaw. Because remember, we've been practicing softening the organs of perception as a way to feel the sensation of more emptiness, but it's sturdied with your discipline, right? So another level is coming into your mind-body relationship. Now, if you want to shut it down because you don't like receiving, clench your jaw, press your tongue hard against the roof of your mouth. You can shut it down. You're actually in control of what you receive, right? Good. And then now soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Relax your belly to relax your throat, but ground your sitting bones and ground your feet. Hit down through your sitting bones and stretch out the top of your head. So now you're trying to add discipline. Now the trick is to not try to make these things work so hard that you don't receive anymore. You need to have structure and discipline to receive, but you need to do it in a way that doesn't cut off the receiving. There's a balance here between action and receiving. It's not one or the other, right? And we live too far on the extremes. Good, and then release. And so we've done a lot of these things before, right? So I want you to bring your hands together, and I mean this as a pose, right? But so, right, the balance between acting and receiving. So is there a way that I can start to engage my palms together in a way that helps me receive a lift in my chest? Well, connect by the heel of the hands, broaden across the collarbones, and open the palms, right? Spread the palms and just try to watch the sensations, because this relationship between the inside and outside of you is actually received. Your brain has to get neutral in order for it to perceive all that's happening in a pose, right? It can't be too active. So part of the art of receiving, and I think it's an art, part of the art of receiving is being able to bring your brain into neutral without feeling vulnerable. So one of the ways to do that is to layer in the breath. There's a form of control, right? Recognize that you have actions in you that are congruent with the neutral or inwardness, that you can combine the two, that this isn't a state that in order to receive, it has to have no shape. Good, and then release. So when we've been doing things, so the hands together here was a form of grounding. Now I want you to put your hands on your legs or on the table if you're at a table, right? And remember, we've done this already, like grounding the hands and feet. So like just notice the things, the difference. So one of the things that I try to teach, I'm teaching kind of more nuanced yoga, is that every pose begins with the sensation of relief. And by the way, relief is required before you start to receive. You've got to be opening in order to truly appreciate the relief. So you're putting your hands on the table and you're trying to feel the table, feel your feet on the floor, feel your sitting bones. That's the structure. That's where you get to control. Right now, I'm not pushing really hard down the table because I don't want to have muscular action interfere with my sense of grounding. And now I'm going to be more nuanced. I'm going to like feel my hands and feet and then watch my breath hit into my rib cage and feel that expansion. My point is that depending on how your brain tunes in, everything's received. You can do some things to bring certain inputs in, like ground your hands and feet. But every sensation is actually received when it's noticed in the body first. And the mind has to quiet down in order to allow the receiving of sensation. Now, what's interesting is when your mind gets in a position, then release. When your mind gets in a situation or a position where it's constantly judging everything that's coming in, right? So this is where I suggest things like sometime, like here's a good thing for you to do at home. And someone I saw already in the chat box asked, you have some postures that can help sleeping. Well, it turns out getting a little bit upside down right before you go to sleep can help, right? So if you lay flat on your back and swing your legs up a wall and just lay there and support your spine, because think about what bed is doing for you. By the way, great homework, receive your bed tonight, right? Like let go to your bed and let it hold you in. Don't just take from your bed. Like, and you know what's kind of crazy is that appreciation or gratitude is a great way to receive, right? That like it's one of the tricks, because gratitude opens you up. It lets your mind go, oh no, I'm not suspicious of this. I'm actually grateful for this. And anyone that I know, even if you have trouble sleeping, if you're not grateful for your bed, I think you got to re-examine some things and practice some different levels of sensation, right? So, and again, so like this idea of letting your spine is going to be really important in relationship to certain stuff. So I want you to then release, and everyone just like kind of, if you can, which I can't, but as you know, I get around in a wheelchair, but everyone stand up and just notice the difference between Okay, now so I'm going to ask for certain funny distinctions, right? I kind of know once I've brought attention to this, it's going to be happy to do. Just sit down like you always do. Just kind of plop yourself down. Just, right? So that's fine, where you just let your bones just kind of and hit down, right? That would be like kind of taking the support of the chair, right? That's like, it's just holding you up. You're not paying attention. Everyone stand back up again. Now, what would I have to do in my body in order to receive the chair? Well, here's an idea for you. Like when you go to sit down, slow it down a little bit, but be more aware of the space between your sitting bones and the chair as they start to shorten. So sit down on the air between you and the chair. Make that part of your sitting and watch how your chest receives a different feeling, right? So it turns out that awareness of your surroundings. So I don't mean go and receive touch from people you're not comfortable with, but you can start receiving the space around you as part of your receiving practice. And when you sit down lighter, right, instead of heavier, don't you have a different relationship to the support of the chair? You have a different appreciation of it. Now, this is something really important for elderly people because they're losing the muscular strength in order to sit down slowly, right? And so like it actually helps them if they don't just fall and crash down. It's actually, if they be more aware of the space they're in as they come down and as they come up. So just sit in your chair again and then lean back. And I know this is like changing what you think receiving is. Go back behind the balance point. And now what you think is just a weight transfer, right? It's more than that, right? Come forward on your sitting bones and start to lean forward and feel what's coming in through the floor as the weight gets heavier on your feet. What I'm trying to tell you is start practices in which you receive, where sensations aren't just had, but they're actually practiced. And then lean back and go, oh, God, I like the back of my chair too. That's good for part of the time. Geez, I just want to like hang up or different things. Like I think for me, there's a big difference between having my palms down. It's like I'm a little bit more aggressive when my palms are down. But I think there's a big energy difference for me, because I've really paid attention to it, between having my palms down and my palms up. Turn your palms up. Receive the air in the room on your palms. Let sensation in. The sensation was always here. Your brain wasn't open enough to receive it, right? And it's not just about focusing your attention, like, oh, I've got to focus my attention so I can feel the air in the room. That sounds crazy. You don't furrow your brow to feel the air on your hands. You actually have to have a little bit of discipline, go inward, and start to feel stuff. Now, one of my favorite receiving practices is the feeling of sunlight on my skin. Now, that's one, and not just baking for a tan, but haven't you had those experiences where you're in the shade and it's all of a sudden like 10 degrees colder and the sun comes from on the cloud and all of a sudden you go, oh my goodness, that's a completely different sensation. These are the places where I think coming home again requires you practicing receiving, right? And like for me, again, one of the greatest moments of mind body integration for me is actually taking a shower, right? Like unbelievably. So it's like, let the water touch you, right? Notice the taste of water in your mouth. Like when you're thirsty, take a sip of water and like savor it. So what we tend to get a little bit too mental about as appreciation, the appreciation is the byproduct of receiving. And so you take more attention to the receiving aspect of what's occurring. And appreciation will naturally follow. Right? Especially when it's simple things. And I would, by the way, I would practice receiving things that feel good. as opposed to practice things that feel bad. You know, we laugh, but a lot of people have way more practice paying attention to what feels bad than what feels good. Right. And so going through your life and letting the world at the pace you want it, let the world touch you. If you want to take the next step, practice receiving hugs. If you got someone that'll hug you, right? But you know what? One of the other really good strategies for receiving is actually practice giving for a while. It lets you be a little bit more in control, right? But the sensation of giving is one of the ways in the process of giving, you start to feel what happens when you give. Because the thing about giving and receiving is that they're actually the same energy, right? They're similar. And so the practice of, but the thing is that there are a lot of people that hide from receiving because they pathologically want to give, right? So people go all different directions, which is with one of the basic, and here's some dumb business talk, one of your fundamental transactions between you and the world is the road of giving and receiving. And I'm telling you, we're not practicing it. We're not watching, and the way that you can receive better is by grounding. You won't receive as much when you're off balance. All the things we've been talking about, softening the organs of perception, developing inner awareness, all those things are the prerequisites for actually receiving. And the only way you're coming home after trauma is to learn to receive again. Your mind will not be able to hold the world together. It's going to need a break, right? And so, and like I say that line that I've said before, your body's the best home your mind will ever have, because your mind actually gets to receive and surrender to the presence of your body. Don't forget, your mind is just a subset of your body. It's not the other way around. Your body's not a subset of your mind. You just like practice, and we delude ourselves to think that our body's a subset of our mind. No, it's the other way around. And that's a fundamental switch in what I think is coming home. So with that, I'm going to end, right? And you just got to like take some time. I mean, what great homework. Pay attention, not just like this, pay attention, like let yourself have certain sensations between now and the time you go to bed. And I'm telling you, if you're having trouble sleeping, it's often because your mind is never actually landing in your bed, right? That's why turning you upside down and letting your spine have to receive more will actually calm your mind down. Like when you actually turn the body as the leader of the reception, of the receiving, right? So when you go upside down and stuff, your mind actually has to act, is not in charge, because the perspective is so new. Any questions or comments? Can you receive pain? Oh, let me look here. Can you receive pain? What happens when you do? Oh yeah, right. I try to not just like the kind of, I live with a lot of chronic pain, and what's really important for me with pain is to receive pain, but know that I surround it. It doesn't occur on the periphery of what I am, right? So believe it or not, I try to bring pain in and then distribute my awareness around it. So, and through it. So I don't believe that so I practice having the pain just be a subset of the overall sensations that are coming through my body. Now that's extremely difficult when it's a super acute pain, right? That's just, when you just broken your arm, it's just going to hurt, right? Like if you ever broken any bones, I've broken too many. It's like, that's just going to hurt for a while. Can you give to a person who is venting? I think that the best thing you can give to someone who's venting is your own grounding, right? That you can stay neutral in the space because you know where your boundary is. And the way you're going to know where your boundary is by practicing grounding and actually paradoxically filling your own vessel a little bit more fully without the thing of what I think about how much space there is in the universe, right? Just because one person nearby you is actually pouring outward doesn't mean there isn't enough space for you to be in the world, right? While that's occurring. Don't forget how big the world is, right? I feel bad for teenage kids or adolescent kids that think that their friends' judgments actually define the whole world. No, it turns out that it's a tiny, people's heads, look outside, people's heads occupy a little tiny space in relationship to the space, but we actually let them become way too big, right? My imagination about what someone's mind, when I'm worried about someone's judgment, I just look at the space around them and ground my own feet, right? There's enough space where that judgment and what the space I'm living in, there's a room for both.
The one you just mentioned about people who can't do advanced poses, she earlier said, what do you mean by upside down for?
Oh, well, I just mean like if you were to lay in your bed and put your feet up on some pillows, or if you were to be able to get on the floor, if you're able to do that, and then put your calves up on a chair, so you're lying in like an inverted chair, like as if you're sitting up, you just that would be a form of upside down. Learning to soften your organs up. If you're having trouble sleeping, learning to soften your organs of perception and then allow the body sensation to come forward will also help you sleep. Your best. So like that's that when the organs of perception are gripped, you're not receiving as well the sensations coming from your body, which when you're in an acute pain cycle, that's why you grip your face and you clench your jaw when you're hurting. I'm going to get through this, right? Because it helps you disconnect from body sensations. And so I'm not talking about advanced yoga poses. I'm talking about practices where your mind allows or gets quieter so your body can deliver sensations, right? And know that there's a part of you that precedes even physical pain. I've learned that the hard way. That the pain you're feeling in your body is not fundamental to what you are. It's a symptom of what you are. But that takes practice. All right, I think it's probably time. Next week's the last week. We'll talk soon. Take care, everybody.